So probably it's not just the social media, right?
Yeah.
It's how society is set up. So Big Mama didn't have opportunities.
Right.
She didn't have a college degree.
Mm-hmm.
She was at the crib. She was a homemaker. So where do homemakers go? They go home.
Yeah.
They tolerate. They get used to. So I have a different take on it. Like, I'm not, praise God, 20, 30 years, but how you feeling about it? Are y'all sleeping in different rooms? Is there any love in the house? Are y'all roommates? Right? Have you tolerated abuse, toxicity, and you just got used to it? That's nothing to be celebrated. It's just what you was and what you were used to. So I don't think it's the Instagram as much as it is culturally opportunities. So you have now a lot of women, especially black women, biggest business owners in one group thriving is black women.
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, just in terms of growing up and seeing mama and daddy, seeing Big Mama, like,
I ain't trying to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want my own stuff, right? And so now you have this dynamic where women are doing great things, and then in the challenge with that is they have different expectations. Some may have a different expectation of men, some may not.
Yeah.
But so it has to do more about culturally, more about opportunities. For a lot of those women stayed there. Lessons to be learned, though, right? And because some of those Big Mamas knew how to talk to their man, right? So they didn't play the man role, like argue for argue. You would see that woman say, "Baby, I need you to go ahead and patch that roof up," and he just worked all day. Well, she gonna rub his back. "Thank you so much. I'm gonna make you some lunch. You just let me know when you're ready." She caring for that man.
It's reciprocal, like you said.
Exactly.
Earlier. Yeah.
So she knew how to talk to a man.
Gotcha. A
lot of times, and so this is why when I counsel couples and a lot of sisters, it's one question I say: listen, you fighting his fight. A man, when he goes through puberty, testosterone washes one side of our brain. So we're that emotional side. Yeah. So that's why that young kid in high school starts getting distant. He don't stay in the room because really he's learning to relearn life. Wow. He was your little baby at 6 and 7. Now you don't know what happened to what happened. Listen, the brother went through. So he's relearning mentally. I mean, biologically, we're brain damaged as men. Wow. Women have both sides of their brain. So you can think logically and emotionally. But the moment you play logic with a man logic, tit for tat, you're going to lose him. Stay on the emotional side. That's what he needs. He just don't know how to communicate the emotional side. Why? Because part of his brain through testosterone distanced him from that. But he knows what it feels like. He desires it. I'm going to tell you, he will respond to it every time.
Good people, what's good? Blessed be host Caleb Smith. Today we have a very special guest in the building, a well-rounded individual, I would say. We have Pastor Jimmie Stephens. How you feeling, brother?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great.
Wonderful.
Yes. This conversation, I'm super just excited about, with you being a pastor,
right?
Therapist, relationship coach.
Right.
You can pretty much cover most issues in the Black community alone, man.
Definitely.
Starting off, how do you feel about this current state of Black relationships? If everybody's always debating on social media, we have live events now where people show up on a panel to talk about what men are doing, what women are doing.
Right.
How do you feel about Black love in 2025?
So first off, good question, because I mean it's generational, right?
Yeah.
Because 30 years ago, a lot of these topics wouldn't even be discussed. Like what I hear most of is from young brothers who have podcasts or statement, what do you bring to the table talking about the young woman? So there's an expectation that we're taking a emotional process, relationships, and we're defining it by a very practical aspect of almost like mathematics. 1 + 1 is 2. Both of them don't equal. So you can't take a rational process like, what do you bring to the table, and say, hey, You don't bring anything to the table. When this is the emotional process, it's an exchange. Relationships is an exchange between two people. So the expectation should never be, what am I getting? Because the ideal is, if we go to scripture, we look at the premise of love is to give. There's no expectation. It's just that a healthy relationship has, like any relationship, reciprocity. I'm giving. So as I'm giving, there's an expectation that I'm going to receive. That's the premise. It's not, what do you bring to the table? I can get sex from anybody. I can get money. That, all of that is a very rational process. That's why these young cats are saying it. They haven't lived. They're not 40, 50. They don't have kids. They don't know what it's like. And like a lot of older women will say, that the very tragic thing is to go in the hospitals and see these elderly men dying alone with an idea. So yeah, it's foolishness. It's good for views, but practically, no, it's not. It doesn't work in life, and especially in relationships.
Mm-hmm. Hearing that part about men getting older, right? Being by themselves, I'd probably say about 2-3 uncles, man, would probably just be chilling to themselves. Players, always been a player all my life. Yeah. And then it's like, dang, I see them now turning 60.
Right.
It's like, all right, what's going to happen when you turn 70, 80? Please, Pastor Stephens, break down why is that so important? Because being in our 20s, you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to die. I'm good. But then not realizing before you know, you'll be 30, you'll be 40. So why is that so important to try to find somebody at that good age opposed to being 70 by yourself?
So first off, two things, because you mentioned, because some people, I don't believe some people ought to be with somebody. Mm-hmm. Some people are better off alone because they've experienced so much trauma, so much negativity growing up, that they are not capable of giving and receiving. They're only capable of receiving. And so when that happens, to the player, to the old head, they're going to play, they're going to be old, they're going to die alone, you're going to have your family around you, you may have some friends or whatever, but that's because, generally, it's because of just the past, because when we look at generations like my parents, like my father, who was somewhat there in my life, not most, like a lot of men my age, absentee parents or fathers, you experience a level of abandonment and neglect. So emotionally, you're used to being isolated. You're used to being alone. And then if you grew up where dad wasn't in the picture and mom wasn't really in the picture emotionally, you have a perception of life emotionally that's framed from those early childhood experiences. So some people don't need to be with anybody. Those who do, and so that's something I want to kind of emphasize that. Because some people try to rescue people to make them, in other words, they a player, but they get with me, they gonna, we gonna make them right. Some people are just not in a position emotionally to experience a healthy relationship, and you have to be okay with that. So those who do want a healthy relationship, it's understanding their adjustments that need to be made, right? Their sacrifices. And a lot of these cats who are older, you realize it. I'm 55. I got friends who in that lane. I'm probably one of the few of the people I grew up with who have been married without divorce, then remarried, and etc. So that's because of my transition, my faith, my growth in Christ, my understanding my own pain, and being able to navigate life through it, right? You never get totally through it, but you're able to manage it. Yeah. So some people just not meant to be together or be with anybody for that matter.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Managing pain, hearing that word, right?
Yeah.
I think instantly about so many just young men who get hurt and then they turn into a quote unquote dog. Yo, I ain't gonna love these hoes. I ain't got time for that. How as black men, how should we process pain? Because we're always just trying to be strong. And just stow it. How should we process pain?
I think you said it right there. First off, is realizing you got to process it.
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to disappear and you can't suppress it. What most of us do is we suppress it. Mm-hmm. So we're angry, we're frustrated, but because we're used to being alone, we don't communicate. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a community, a healthy counselor, a friend group, a community of brothers who you can kind of offload to communicate, you're just building up this stress in your life and not being able to recognize, okay, why am I so upset? So there's a practice that I believe all men and women need to learn is, first off, how do you question yourself? So typically, negative experience, habit is we react.
Yep.
You make me upset, I'm angry, and I react, right? So that's the normal habit of emotional process. Healthy process is I'm upset. And then questioning, okay, Jimmie, why are you upset? Why are you mad? Because she did that. Okay, what did she do? What was something she said? And how did it make you feel? Well, I feel hurt. Why do you feel hurt? Because she made a statement that made me feel what? Unloved. So instead of me suppressing the fact that I felt unloved because I think my wife said something and I took it and it hurt me, instead of me saying, when you made that statement, it made me feel unloved. That's a process. That's a growth. It's a skill. Communication is a skill, just like anything else, right? Because you love somebody don't mean you got it together. Right. So the skill still needs to be there. It's like if I never built anything before, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to build a house, you're in trouble. Get a skill. In other words, practice self-talk, practice self-reflection, like understanding you as a person personally, like, why am I feeling like this? So life is a growth process. You kind of recognize, okay, for me now in my state, because I've been doing this for so long, I know I have feelings of abandonment and neglect. So when it comes to certain issues, I'm aware. So if I'm triggered, if I'm angry, I'm pulling back and saying, okay, why are you angry? Okay. And then when it comes to my wife, if she's saying something, she's like, because when you face abandonment and neglect, you don't communicate. So it's not like there's never going to be a day where I come home and I tell my wife all my feelings and all my emotions. Right. So that's not realistic, right? Yeah. Some people can do that because they grew up in a healthy environment. Yeah. Realistically, that's not going to happen for me. So best that I do is, babe, when you said that, I felt disrespected. Yeah. Is it going to go deeper than that? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But in terms of understanding that dynamic about me, that helps me to process my pain. So I'm not suppressing it and holding on to it, because that's what's killing us, is that stress. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Not knowing that you are suppressing all this pain, but allowing for some practice of releasing, community, talking, getting an understanding of your own internal process. Mm-hmm. When you understand your own internal process and you can identify it, that's half the battle, because now you can say, okay, I'm angry. You don't have to build. You can just share. You can offload without the reaction, because that's the toxic part. Yeah. I'm angry, you're going to feel it. But you didn't address it. You didn't address why you were angry. You just reacted. So you're still there in this vicious, toxic circle of pain. Yeah. So it's recognizing first, you got to process it, identify it, so you can communicate it to yourself first, ideally to your spouse or your partner, so they can understand where maybe the issue was, so they get a better understanding moving forward. That triggers you, that gets you upset, and hopefully they'll make an adjustment.
Hearing that, Pastor, though, immediately, I think about young men who are trying to vent, and then it's like this very fine line between venting too much to where a woman, she could say he's like emotionally unstable. Yeah. So as men, should we vent more, or should we just try to like strategize about venting?
So venting. When I say vent, I'm talking about talking to a counselor or community, not to your
spouse or your partner.
Right, because venting really creates more stress. So if I'm offloading, cortisol is being built up. So if I'm offloading, stress is being built up. So how do I respond to that? If you're venting, you offloading, there has to be somebody there to help you process that. Like, okay, why are you mad? You done said your spiel, but why are you upset? Right? Get you back to rational thinking. So humans are binary, right? We are spiritually, we're spirit, soul, and body. In terms of the practical, everyday workout of human experience is rational and it's emotional. Rational mind does not connect with emotional experiences. So the goal is I feel something emotionally. Let me rationally think through why I'm feeling like this so I don't offload, I don't vent. I can share the feeling without creating this negative emotional buildup. So I tell people, when you feel angry and you ask yourself the question why, automatically you're going to get emotional release because you're not in that emotional state. Now you're in a rational one. Angry. But when you get in the habit, okay, why are you angry? Immediately the cortisol and the stress stops building because you're not in that lane anymore. You're in your rational mind.
You got to start thinking.
There you go. Yep. Because when you start thinking and you can identify it, then the stress level goes down because you're not in that emotional state. You removed yourself. So we're able to do this, right? We're able to be rational or emotional. The challenge is most of us stay in the emotional state because of habit. That's all we know. We didn't know that, oh, there's a button that we can push that stops that buildup because we can identify what's really happening in us emotionally. That's the skill set. And so that's when you're not venting. You're able to say, that statement, that action, it made me feel what? That's the communication part. Because then you can have a talk. Without there being, you blankety blank. That's anger because you didn't find out, well, what's behind the anger? And that's the key, is when you do that.
Yes, sir. Pastor, these kids now, it's a term that they use, crash out, right? Where kids say, oh, I'm about to crash out, go crazy, right?
Okay.
And now it's this thing of like crash out culture where it's if a guy steps on another brother's shoe,
right,
crash out, start shooting up the club, or if he says something disrespectful, or if this black woman sees this woman, oh, I don't like her.
Right.
Why do you think just right now everybody's emotional intelligence seems very low? Of just everybody's just trying to snap on each other.
Nothing new under the sun, bro.
Nothing new under the sun.
Listen, they was doing that in Detroit in the 1980s, brother. You step on a joker's shoe, it's about to be a shootout. You look at a brother 2 seconds, you just glance it, and they want to fight. So all that's culturally, in our community, the tragedy is understanding that, where this toxicity comes from. Right? We have been trained to hate on us. We have been trained to identify. And when I say train, when you don't love yourself and value you, you're not going to value the next person. Yeah. I mean, understand, all of our actions are internal reflection. So if I'm angry at you because you look like me, really I'm angry at me, and I'm projecting it onto you, that's where we don't get it, right? We don't understand the wiring mechanism of human nature is projection. So if I'm angry and I'm projecting, that's identifying, okay, why are you mad at yourself? What about you don't you like? Typically, that's the toxicity, right? And this goes back to slavery. This is what we talk about systemic racism, right? It's not just saying, okay, equal rights and whatnot. It's understanding that emotional experiences, they don't age. They stay with you. So grandparents, great-great-grandparents, parents, all the things, the toxicity that the grandparents or the great-grandparents receive, passed on. So now the parent has this toxicity. And they don't realize when they're in the house cussing each other out, slamming doors. And then they wonder why the kids are always fighting. Well, because you have transferred this toxicity. So all they know is we anger, we react, we fight, right? They don't know, okay, how do I have a healthy, rational conversation? That's the practice part. So it's the result of crashing is understanding it's love. When you start loving you, you start valuing you, you start seeing other people. Then you want to bring everybody else up because you know, hey, listen, your view on life is, listen, it's a lot of opportunity and growth out here. Why are you trying to pull yourself down and pull somebody else down or kill some other black brother or sister for no other apparent reason because you haven't discovered your own pain? And until you discover your own pain, you're going to continue to project it. And so to the young brother that's listening, you got to ask yourself, what about you don't you like? And you got to sit in that state, in that sentence long enough to get an answer. So you can identify, maybe it's because you felt that you were not loved, you were neglected, you were abandoned. I mean, I was thinking that same thing as I when you asked that question. I was thinking about that earlier today when I was waiting to come in. How when I was this young kid, wayward, 17, 18, selling dope in Detroit. Wayward kid, got to the point where my mother said, you got to go. Went to my dad's house. My dad stayed, grew up in Detroit, Michigan. My dad stayed in Southfield, so about 30 minutes away, suburb of Detroit. I go to him. He says, no, you can't stay here. So my mama put me out. My daddy said, I don't want you. Girlfriend quit me the next day. Jeez. The best experience of my life, but the worst, because I learned a lesson right there. That first off, my behavior is they're not going to take it because I'm their son, right? I got to step up my game. And I realized all this acting out was I was this kid who felt neglected, unloved, because that's what I was receiving. Mm-hmm. So I was projecting that. Yeah. So we was just wilding. My whole high school, I shouldn't even graduate. Hardly showed up to my high school 11th, 12th grade year. I was absent more than I was present. And so here it is, this toxic individual living life wayward and contract out on my life, selling dope. And the only thing, I'm gonna tell you what rescued me, grace of God and praying grandmother first. Mm-hmm. Second, I was selling dope. Detroit had this thing. It was called a dry spell. It was busting all. So you watch. They got these shows. What's the name of that show with
BMF?
There you go,
yes,
BMF.
Detroit, yeah.
There you go. So
yeah.
when during that time when they had the big drug bust, there was a dry spell for the low brothers like myself, just buy 8 balls and whatnot. Yeah. All that stopped. So here it is. I graduated high school. I have nothing on the agenda. Graduate 1.45 GPA. Wow. Here I am, no vision, no goal, and a recruiter calls me, and I was asleep. It was a Marine recruiter, 7 o'clock in the morning. You don't call a dude 7. And I was like, yeah, I gave the joker the wrong address. That's how stupid I was. Just wayward. And then, of course, 2 hours later, they in the same building. Navy recruiter calls me and say, yeah, my buddy tell me you gave me the wrong address. You want to go to the Navy? So that's how I ended up in the Navy, just like that. So went down, took the test, ended up, and then on my way to Yokosuka, Japan, LAX. I went from Detroit Thanksgiving Day to LAX, and I'm going through. And in other words, at that point, that was my conversion, right? Mm-hmm. That's when I realized, okay, Christ is in the world. God loves me. Mm-hmm. Got to the ship and got a hold of a shipboard ministry where these brothers were strong believers. Mm-hmm. So when we go to ports, we would preach the gospel. Mm-hmm. And that transformed my life from that wayward, angry, purposeless young man to identifying what Christ was seeing in me before I was seeing it in myself. So at that point, that's when love was birthed in my heart. So now I'm not trying to kill you.
Yes, sir.
Now I'm trying to bless you. Now I'm praying for you. Now I'm trusting that your life becomes better than what it was. So but that whole experience is what happens today, right? The mirror of young kids carrying the anger and the pain and not recognizing they got it.
Yes, sir. I love that. Yeah. The Forge, it is a great film. Have you seen that movie before?
The who?
The Forge.
Oh, yeah. We just watched it the other day. My son came home. Nice. He's like, y'all got to watch this. Yeah,
yes.
It's good.
Passion, man. Hearing you, talk about finding great brothers, right?
Right.
Mentorship is so important.
Yeah.
If you can, please just break down why young brothers need to go out and seek other great brothers, sometimes older as well, for that mentorship.
Yeah, I mean, it's community, right? So we, birds of a feather, flock together.
Right.
When you're around people who are going somewhere, who know more than you know,
right?
Who think differently than you think. I think that's the best gift that life can bring, because when I left Detroit, I was talking to people who was thinking differently. Mm-hmm. Changed my whole perspective. I think of like Abrahamic experience, leave your mother and father, go to a land. So mentorship is like that. You may not physically leave, but mentally. Somebody can take you to a space. Somebody can share with you. Oh, you can invest. Oh, what's investing? Or you can start a business doing this. You can monetize your skill. So, you can have a decent, healthy life. When you think like that and you see people living it out, exposure expands you. So when I see it lived out in somebody, older person, a community of brothers, that changes your whole perception, because now life is not about this past. Life is about moving at the pace of the group you're in. I think it's critical. I think if you don't have a mentor, first off, you got to recognize they may not come to you. So you got to find somebody who is going in the direction you want to go. Right. And I'm going to tell you from being older, when you begin to talk to people who are older, what's going to happen is this. As a young man, they're going to want to invest in you. Yeah. Right? These folks, I tell young people this because I talk to high school students all the time. 16, 17, 18, listen, that's free zone. Don't miss it because folks ain't going to, they know you ain't got no money. So they going to say, listen, come on by, sit down, hang out with me. You get a free education in terms of what they're doing because they just love the fact that you this kid who want to learn. It's no kid ever pulled me aside who I didn't sit down and say, okay, this is what you do. Here go my cell number. Call me. This ain't my business line. This is my cell. Call me if I can help you with anything. Because that's what I want to do. And typically when you find people who are successful, who are moving in life, who have a vision, they ain't holding back, especially to a young high school kid. So if you high school age, listen, this is prime time to connect with people because they going to want to help you out for free.
Yeah. Before they start wanting to charge you for when you get older. Huh?
Listen, you get a base that them coaching programs real right there.
Yes, sir. Hey, Pastor, you preaching, man. You preaching. And, just staying on mentorship and guidance, right? In the Black church. I grew up in the church, love the church, right?
Right.
However, though, I feel like now I don't see the same amount of programs in the church, same amount of mentorship.
Yeah.
How can we start having tangible solutions and programs for these younger kids now?
Right. I think it comes to just really understanding, first off, generationally there's a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
You got Gen Z. First off, I believe the fact was, I think it's 10 or 15% of Gen Zers even watch television.
Wow. I can believe that.
So you got a whole new generation of people who don't think like that and won't ever think like that. So the reality of it is, I don't think anything is wrong as much as it is, okay, how do we make an adjustment now? How do we adjust to where people are at in terms of YouTube, media programs, a la carte teaching? That's where people are at. Like more Gen Zers, they're going to listen to podcasts, watch something educational on a topic that they need. They may not go to a church service on Sunday and sit through somebody talking about being a disciple when that's, I'm good. That's really the mentality because everything when they grew up is a la carte. Press this, watch this, learn this. Yeah. So now you take that and you try to blend it together. It doesn't match. So I don't think it's a challenge as much as it is for the church to say, how do we do ministry now? Right. When I cut my teeth in ministry, it was the 90s, right? No internet, cell phones just kind of came out. So you was on the street witnessing, right? You want to get somebody in church, you got to call them. You got to follow up. I since Sunday, I was a young minister. I was calling folks. Yeah, we didn't see you at church. I'm calling people. That was then. Now you got media. You got social media. I have a marketing agency, so I teach pastors now how to come into the 21st century. Yeah. First off, use Facebook ads. Don't show a service. Pick up that phone and look at it.
That's right.
And engage with the audience who's there. No one's going to come to your church because they saw that video clip of you ministering. I don't care how great you think you are. It's not going to connect like you looking at that phone, talking and engaging with people. So it's that point. How do we do ministry now? What are our expectations? I don't expect, and a lot of pastors I know don't even expect folk to show up on Sundays. And I don't think nothing's wrong with it as much as it is, okay, how do we create community, a new way of community? Yeah. Without being, because they got the mega churches, they are not as big and thriving as they were when they first hit the scene. So you see this shift. So it's just really understanding, well, how do we do ministry now? What are our expectations so we're not disappointed? That's really critical, I think, for us as the church to see it through the lens of where culturally we're at with technology. How do we maybe create a community of people who are not consistently showing up on Sunday? Because that grandma and grandpa, that's what they did out of really habit. And that's what happened when you saw COVID hit. the habit broke.
Yeah, that's true.
And them folks ain't dawn and do sense because it's like, hey, I can watch you online. It's
kind of comfortable for me.
Listen, you know, so how do we do that? How do we do ministry? And I think, you know, I don't know the answer.
Right.
I think as a pastor, I'm still finding out how I'm going to do ministry in the next 5 or 10 years.
Wow.
Because it's different. And so am I looking to show up on Sunday every week, or am I looking to have online and then have a community of people we meet once a month, twice a month, where we connect and we're teaching on certain principles and values to get you in, and we have small groups. Yeah. So church is different.
Yeah.
It's not like it used to be, and it will never be like it used to be. And as long as we are thinking ahead and where we're at versus, okay, this is what it was like, and then we're comparing where we're at to what it was like. Oh, we messed up. Did we mess up, or do we just need to evolve and make adjustments so that ministry can be ministry? Because truthfully, even on this show, I'm thinking, okay, Lord, do I just need to pivot and just teach on relationships, period? Have a relationship church, a la carte. You want to grow, disciple, come here. And I'm praying about
that's
that.
Kind of genius, though. I'm not even gonna lie.
Right, because that's really where people are at in terms of seeing how it pays out for them. Right? How does your relationship with your Father in heaven, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your child, how does that play out? How does that look? How do we live life like this? So it's different. And I'm still trying to find that sweet spot, if you will, of expectations. I don't have any expectations now. That's really why I'm not frustrated.
Wow.
I used to have expectations, but then I realized, okay, well, that was then.
This is
everything. Yeah. So technology, the way we are now, I mean, come on, AI.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Hey, you can write your entire sermon.
Listen,
via chat GPT. I was just talking to my dad about that.
Listen,
crazy.
It's everything, right? I own a digital marketing agency, and we have voice AI.
Wow.
Yep. So our voice AI will call people and have we call it AI Jane, intellectually have a conversation, laugh. Wow. Some people don't even know they're talking to an AI voice, right? This is now, right? So just think of what that does to the church. Just think of what it does to culture, how we think, how we learn.
Yeah.
We ain't got to learn no more. Right?
We got this device.
There you go. To your point, Chat GPT, give me a message. Well, I ain't thinking that. That's insightful. Praise the Lord. Y'all got another perspective, right? So all this stuff is what we're facing now. Yes. But here's the reality. That's when you have to put things in its proper place. Your relationship with Christ as a person, then you have a relationship to your calling as a pastor. So your devotional time is your devotional time.
Yeah.
People typically preach from their devotional. They don't teach from the practical understanding of the congregation. So I felt it, then I preach it. Versus who am I ministering to? Where are we going?
Yeah.
What do they need to hear? That needs to be studied out where you have understanding. I'm not against AI. My wife will tell you, I love technology. I love AI. Understanding. But my personal devotional, you can't AI that. That's you on your knees, worshiping, praying, praising God. It is. Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And you can't substitute that for AI. But in terms of teaching, in terms of getting understanding, in terms of getting perspective, I use it because I think it gives me insight. Because first off, I don't know everything.
That's right.
Right? And if I can ask for a different perspective to give me insight on a thought, that's great. I'm with that. I don't believe I know everything. I don't care how anointed you are. I done seen it. Yeah. Folks know everything, but that's why they're so small, because they're not accepting anything from anybody else. They think their mind is the anointed place where God lives and nowhere else.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't think nothing wrong with it. I think we just got to adjust.
Hearing that, Pastor, it's like I've seen this rift between Black people's trust with the church, right?
Yeah.
How can we try to just rebuild that trust? Because certain people, they'll have critiques, having church hurt.
Right.
They're saying, hey, in the church, I feel like going to a sermon, I don't feel spiritually fed. I just feel like, the pastor, he just wants everybody to feel great and to tithe. And I don't get anything tangible out of it. So how can we try to bridge that gap between people that's not going to the church anymore?
Good question. I think first off, it starts with the person, right? Because people, if you're seeking, there's an old philosophy, right? The student shows up when the teacher is ready, or the teacher shows up when the student's ready, right? Well, I forget how it goes. But the essence is, okay, when you're ready to learn, you're there. So at some point, typically we gotta be honest. So if we're upset at our pastor because we're hurt, it could be valid. Let's talk about it. Pastor, when you said that or did that, I felt this. Now, if you got an emotionally intelligent pastor, they're gonna first validate your experience. Didn't say they had to agree with it, but validate it. I'm sorry. I can see how that would hurt you. That wasn't my intention. I tell you what, I will do this so you won't experience that no more. My goal is to have you receive from me, not receive from me because he's emotional barriers. But truthfully, pastors, most of us haven't dealt with our pain. Right? So you got pastors who got abandonment issues, neglect issues, overcritical caregivers. They have these emotional negative processes that they ain't sitting down in therapy because they too spiritual. So they projecting all this. This is real talk. They're projecting all this into a pulpit. So you got these people who are narcissists, who are pastors. They got these issues. And that's really, I hope a pastor watching me go in, talk to somebody. You don't have it. Right? I counsel with pastors, bishops, apostles who will come to me with their spouse. Right? And I know, and I'm the same way. In other words, I know my issue though. So I'm not hiding it. And that's where the toxicity comes from. That's where the hurt comes from. You got a hurt man or woman who's teaching and preaching from hurt. And then trying to create a ministry around their hurt. So obviously that hurt person will hurt people, ostracize those who don't agree with them because they believe on some level it's all about them. You don't love me. Well, why is it when it become about you? They need to love Jesus. They don't even love themselves. So how they gonna love you? I've heard pastors say that. They say they love me. We folk trying to figure out their own love. They don't even love it. They only love their spouse right. How they gonna love you? So there's this misunderstanding of, first off, as a pastor, where are you in therapy? Are you and I thank God now because you got these ministries and pastors who are like, listen, I'm in therapy, I'm in counseling, and I'm good because I'm talking to somebody. Life is not meant to be lived by yourself. You look at Jesus and his disciples. Look at situations that would happen. Right. Peter would come to him. The Bible says the sons of thunders will come and they say, who's greater, master? They had these questions, but they weren't afraid to go to Jesus. Right. How many people are afraid to go to their pastor? Right? How many people are afraid to ask their pastor something?
He ain't even got time. You got to talk to the church secretary.
Right. So that's you. Yeah. You get to choose. Nobody told you to go there.
Yep.
If it ain't right,
if it's you don't like big,
if it's too big, that's a good statement, right? Yeah. Some people, and that's why a lot of ministries are big because we ain't got to talk to nobody. It's no accountability.
Yep.
But if you go in there looking for a connection, you don't need to be there. Nothing wrong with the church. This ain't you. If you don't like Thai food, don't dog the Thai restaurants. I just don't go. Yeah. Right? It's just not me. That's not my scene. Right. But it's nothing wrong with it. So that's really where the reality is. Where you at? Right. Do I need help? Do I need to be in a position where I need to walk out my own pain so that I don't have these misguided expectations and say it's the church, but really it's me? Because if I love sitting down talking to people and asking them questions, like, why do you feel that way? What made you? And then you realize, so really it's not them. You're really angry at yourself for accepting that, taking that, and not dealing with it.
It's that logic part.
Right. There you go. That's why we ask. Right. That's why we ask questions. Yeah. Because internally you got this stuff going on, but mentally you haven't checked in here to process it, right? And so it's on every level.
Man, Pastor, I am thoroughly enjoying this conversation. This one clip has been going crazy on TikTok. Okay. It was a church in Virginia, I believe. Right, Sid? Yeah. In Virginia, young lady, she had to stand up in front of the whole congregation and apologize about being pregnant. Now, judging by her looks, I think she was probably like early 20s. So it's not like she's 16 or something like that. I personally don't think she's that young. Right. But seeing that clip, everybody was trying to support the sister and say, yo, like, you don't have to go through this. Everybody's been trying to pull up to the church on the pastor. However, though, the girl's mom, she went on Facebook and said, hey, this is our church. We firmly believe in these practices, these standards. And for me, I was like, this is crazy time because I just saw this clip last night. Pastor, from your own church experience, how do we try to find this healthy balance between, I don't even want to use the word shame because I think shaming could be so detrimental. But between accountability maybe and actual true love and not, hey, you have to stand up in front of this entire congregation and explain why you're pregnant. However, the deacon, he might have a whole side, baby. The pastor, it might even be the pastor's child, right? So just how do you feel? Because seeing that clip, I experienced so many different emotions and thoughts, all of that. But from just hearing this standpoint, how do you feel about that entire thing?
Man, I feel hurt. I feel sad. I feel that for the most part, for a person who has to go in front of somebody and say, or in front of people everybody in the room doing some mess, just as they got caught. Right? Jesus said, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. He said that to a woman caught in the act of adultery. But she wasn't caught in the act of adultery by herself. It was a man she was with. But yet who they wanted to stone? The woman. And the same thing what Jesus said, the one who is without sin, let that person cast the first stone. Let that be the person who says, you stand up because you sinned in front of this congregation. Let whoever said that, let's look at your life. Let's see if there's something in there that God would not honor. Fact is, God knew that we was going to mess up. That's why he put us in Christ. The Bible says, well, now you are in Christ Jesus. You are a new creation. He's not looking at us through the lens of our faults and failures. He's looking at us through the lens of who he placed us in, which is Christ. And when you understand that the mission is always, let me strive to look like Christ, God in his wisdom knew we would never meet the measure. That's why he did away with the law and came in. Now we're in a dispensation of grace. You look at Rahab the harlot, who ushered in our Messiah. I mean, so where are we at here? So my heart goes out to that individual, but understanding grace is here. Mercy and love is here. There, and to your point, shame is a negative emotion. No one is being better because they feel shamed. No one's going to rise to the occasion. But I'm going to tell you what will rise to the occasion is acceptance. Feeling accepted even though I messed up. And even though in this process, hey, you had sex, you have a baby, is God mad at you? No. Do these people who are judging you need to look at their own selves and analyze the community that they're in, because it's not healthy. Yeah. No environment that glorifies shame is healthy. Ask the preacher's kid who grew up where he had an overbearing parent, right, who said, you got to do this because of this. That kid ain't like, yo, I want to serve Jesus. No, that joke out.
It's always the worst kid.
Yeah, that's the preacher's kid, right? That's what they say. Yeah. And so because those expectations, so that's really what that's about. It's an environment, a community that thrives in acceptance. Yeah. Listen, there's no telling what that community's going to do, what that family's going to do, right? We accept you. I think about Bishop Jake's daughter, pregnant at what, I think 13.
Oh, I didn't even know it was that young.
Yeah.
Sarah, she was pregnant at that young?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, powerful testimony when he tells it. Powerful testimony. And look at her now.
Amazing.
Look at what that environment. See, we don't, our small-mindedness. You don't know what destiny's going to carry you. Yeah. You don't know what providence is, right? And I'm not saying, because everybody who come from somewhere came from somewhere. Everybody got a story. Yeah. You ain't heard about the divorces that these mega ministries have, right? Or the pastor sitting in the pulpit, to your point, who he got up in there. He may have somebody, but see, he ain't going to come up. So it's hypocritical, man. Yeah. And it's self-righteous. And it's toxic. It's shame will kill any family, will kill any community. Yeah. One of the things we practice by God's grace is when my wife and I, because of my toxicity and her experience growing up, we were so intentional with our kids. We never told them what they had to do with their faith. Never said you can't do this. One statement I made to my kids when they were in elementary school, and to my surprise, they kept it, because I grew up in a toxic life. I didn't know what obedient kids look like. So I just said, listen, I said, guys, listen, y'all gonna go into middle school, y'all gonna go to high school. People gonna be dating. I would tell you right now, it's the worst thing you can do is date in middle school and high school. Because if your heart gets broken, your GPA gonna go down the tube. Your college opportunities gonna go down the tube, because you ain't gonna want to do nothing but sit up in that room and cry. And now in your future, so get yourself established first. Don't date. Focus. And my kids did it. My kids right now in college at Bible study. I didn't tell them to do that. They have their own relationship with Christ, got their own community of friends of faith. That's because we were intentional about freeing them from expectations. You want, praise God, let's go. I'm supporting you. This family is my first ministry, right? Not the people in the church house, but this family. And so pastors typically who create shameful environments for their children, you see it because they're very wayward. And there's no connection with and sadly, there's no connection with their child, because they see it. There's no emotional security in that relationship, because you broke that when you beat them up because they messed up or they were a kid. Yeah. It's still learning, it's still growing, it's still developing mentally. So you got to give grace.
Yeah, man. Pastor, what type of emotional toll do you think pastoring takes on being a man, a black man, a father? Because what most people don't see is you as a pastor or other pastors are picking up phones when so-and-so just got shot or something. Right. You're at the hospital praying over members of the congregation, or this person's sick, or you're showing up to funerals, and then you might show up home exhausted. Yeah. What toll does being a pastor have on being a father?
Well, it can be stressful, right? If you don't have defining things. So one thing that I've learned is my first ministry is my family. Mm-hmm. So I may not show up. I tell my congregation, listen, you call me at 1:00, my phone is off. I'm sleeping. Yeah. That's why you gotta have a relationship with Christ. Don't. Who am I? I'm a pray for you. I
can't work no miracles.
Yeah, really. You know what I'm saying? That's it. So it's defining expectations, right? And it's understanding. So first off, it can be stressful, and if you make it stressful, it is stressful when you're trying to live up to people's expectations of who you think they think you should be. Pastoring is a thankless vocation. You will spend, and I have done it, I have spent hundreds, thousands helping people. And they will turn away and act like they don't know you. They'll forget the hour of need that you showed up when you was the man of God and you was bless you, pastor, and now you blankety blank, blank, blank. So that's people. So you have to define expectations. And so it's rigorous, right? You ain't getting paid for this. It's starting off, people say, I want to be a pastor, get paid. Listen, you know how much work you put into this? You know what I'm saying? Where you're doing your ministry to the best of your ability, and you got people showing up with 5 or 10% of what they, most people ain't even bought into what you buying into for a good 3 or 4 years before you're consistently giving before they get a revelation. Oh, you know what? This is good, but I'm inspired to go work and do something. So it's thankless. It can be stressful, but that's where you got to define your expectations. Because if you go into it thinking somehow I want to minister to these people, bless these people, help these people may not even want your help or ministry. Yeah. Right? So you have to commit to the calling and just do what's necessary for the calling. Don't sacrifice your family over ministry ever. And you will always have a good foundation, because the ministry will come and go. You may not pastor next year. You may not be pastor. So what happens then?
Who are you?
Yeah, who are you, right? So I'm everything in terms of me. When I say everything, I'm not just one person. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah. I'm a business owner. I'm a coach. I'm all those things. That's what makes me who I am. So it's not just one thing. And things are seasonal. Right? You may be pastoring and leading at one point, but you may shift, right? Especially now, that's what's happening. And I kind of help pastors in this day and age realize the opportunity, because some are struggling financially, is that, you can leverage your counseling, coach couples, coach families, help them, right? Because you giving it out, they ain't listening to you. And you got people who will sit down and pay you for your advice and your counsel. So you got to go where you celebrate.
Have to work too.
Say what?
Have to work too sometimes.
Yeah, listen.
Yeah, trying to deal with a whole congregation.
Listen,
and things like
that. It is a very, again, thankless process. It's a calling. Yeah. It's right. It's just like anybody who's running into a burning building. Why would you do that?
You were called to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No one in their right mind is running into it like they got these fires in Los Angeles now. Yeah. No one is running into a burning house. Who signs up for that? Somebody who's called to. Who signs up to be with people in their worst situations? To know you just lost your spouse. Wow. And I'm going to go by and I'm going to pray with you. And knowing you could be mad at God, which means you mad at me. Right? You don't know what you're walking into. Because you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Things like that happen. To be with a young woman who just lost her brother. I remember being a youth pastor in California. One of my young people, youth at the time, her brother died in a car accident. Going into the hospital room with her and her parents, who wasn't in church. And, working through that. No one's signing up for that. That's a calling, because you want to be there to love people, because being with somebody in their darkest moment, you ain't got to say nothing, but just being there has so much of an impact on their life. And so you just got to know where you fit in at.
Yeah. Man. Hey, that's good talk right there, Pastor. Growing up in the church, thank God, I grew up in a very pro-Black church, right?
Right.
Where we always had Black history things.
Right.
Where, being showed Black people throughout the Bible,
yes.
all of that. However, though, some people that grew up in the church, Black people weren't exposed to that.
Right.
Where it's a white Jesus here, everybody's white, right?
Right.
Why do you think some Black churches, because not all, because we got some strong Black churches out there, but some of them don't talk about white supremacy's impact on the Black church itself?
It's community, man. So it's, every community, just like every restaurant, is going to have its own niche. Right. This own flavor. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of, right now in this day and age, especially when they're dealing with taking a lot of Black history out of schools.
Yeah, that's true. Critical race theory.
Right. Yeah. Right. That you got to, as a parent, as a grandparent, take it upon yourself to teach that. Mm-hmm. And then if you're in the church, more power to you, because now you got a community around you. Because truthfully, churches, and that's what we do now in Black churches, we support what's missing. Mm-hmm. Right. So we want to educate you on who you are. Yeah. We want to help you in terms of internal conflict. Mm-hmm. We want to help you make money, grow with your family, get life insurance. Saying basic stuff that most people got some people got when they were growing up, because they may have had a parent or two parents who were educated, understood how the marketplace worked, and prepared their kids. Some didn't have it. So we are social workers as well as ministers of the gospel. Yeah. So that's why a lot of white people will say, white church will say, well, why y'all teach on finances? Because folks broke. We can't show up on a Sunday and people barely is making ends meet. And as a pastor who loving people, not saying, listen, let's see what skill set you got. Let's monetize. I mean, that's what I tell. Listen, monetize your skill. Yeah. I'm going to give everything I got, because I want you to win. I want you to experience life. And you cannot experience life having a fraction of an understanding of life. As a Western culture in America, you have to understand certain things that maybe you didn't get when you were growing up. So the church comes in to support that, ideally. So I mean, I think it's good. I don't think nothing's wrong with it. I think, that's what you're going to see more of, because that's what the church has always done. Mm-hmm. Look at the civil rights movement. Yeah, that's when the black church was kicking, thriving. Before internet, you had marches, organized stuff, and we ain't had nothing to organize.
Very impressive too, man.
Listen,
that's crazy.
But now you got so many distractions. Ain't nobody showing up. But before the internet, all these people were coming, and they were meeting at local churches. Yeah. Local churches back then gave the black man identity. See, he couldn't have a title at his job, but he sure could be a deacon. He could be an usher. He could be on a choir. She could be over the Bible study. Right? It gave you a level of identity and purpose. So it's my turn today to preach to children, right, at Sunday school. Today I'm praying, opening up in prayer. I'm the head deacon. It gave you a sense of identity and value, because the world wasn't valuing you. So the church had this process where they would come in and people would get value from their positions, which is it's the same thing. It's always been that way. Yeah. We show up where the gap is, and so I think it's just going to be what it is in terms of how culture moves, society moves. You're going to see the church move.
Man, Pastor, this conversation right here, bro, it was needed. I probably got like 3 more questions for you.
That's fine, man.
Thank you so much. All the big mamas, the big daddies, they were married for 50, 60, 70 plus years, right? But at the funeral, sometimes you start seeing about the side family that big daddy had. Yeah. Big mama was doing this. Yeah. However, though, they stayed together. Yeah. Our couples now, divorce rates at an all-time high. We got social media. Right. Married man, he could be at the crib. Married woman, she got her own Instagram crush. He got his own Instagram that he's scrolling on. Explore page is crazy. Do you think if our big mamas and big daddies had an Instagram, a Twitter, would they have actually still stayed together? How do you feel about that?
So probably it's not just the social media, right? Yeah. It's how society is set up. So big mama didn't have opportunities. Right. She didn't have a college degree. Mm-hmm. She was at the crib. She was a homemaker. So where do homemakers go? They go home. Yeah. They tolerate. They get used to. So I have a different take on it. Like, I'm not, praise God, 20, 30 years, but how you feeling about it? Are y'all sleeping in different rooms? Is there any love in the house? Are y'all roommates? Right? Have you tolerated abuse, toxicity, and you just got used to it? That's nothing to be celebrated. It's just what you was and what you were used to. So I don't think it's the Instagram as much as it is culturally opportunities. So you have now a lot of women, especially black women, biggest business owners in one group thriving is black women. Yeah. Why is that? Well, just in terms of growing up and seeing mama and daddy, seeing big mama, like,
I ain't trying to be like
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want my own stuff, right? And so now you have this dynamic where women are doing great things, and then in the challenge with that is they have different expectations. Some may have a different expectation of men, some may not. Yeah. But so it has to do more about culturally, more about opportunities. For a lot of those women stayed there. Lessons to be learned, though, right? And because some of those big mamas knew how to talk to their man, right? So they didn't play the man role, like argue for argue. You would see that woman say, "Baby, I need you to go ahead and patch that roof up," and he just worked all day. Boy, she gonna rub his back. "Thank you so much. I'm gonna make you some lunch. You just let me know when you're ready." She caring for that man.
It's reciprocal, like you said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she knew how to talk to a man.
Gotcha.
A lot of times, and so this is why when I counsel couples and a lot of sisters, that's one question I say: listen, you fighting his fight. A man, when he goes through puberty, testosterone washes one side of our brain. So we're that emotional side. So that's why that young kid in high school starts getting distant. He don't stay in the room because really he's learning to relearn life. Wow. He was your little baby at 6 and 7. Now you don't know what happened to him. What happened? Listen, the brother went through, so he's relearning mentally. I mean, biologically, we're brain damaged as men. Women have both sides of their brain. So you can think logically and emotionally. But the moment you play logic with a man logic, tit for tat, you're going to lose him. Stay on the emotional side. That's what he needs. He just don't know how to communicate the emotional side. Why? Because part of his brain through testosterone distanced him from that. But he knows what it feels like. He desires it. I'm going to tell you, he will respond to it every time. And so when you play that position like Big Mama did, you get more out of that man. You inspire him to do it versus feeling like you got to yell at him to do it. He's not a child, and that's what distances himself from that woman. It's like, hey, you always yelling at me. I don't respond to that. Who responds to that? No one's motivated by being cussed out. No one's more connected by being yelled at. So you have to use strategy. Women are gifted. I tell sisters, you got both sides of your brain. You hanging on side of one. Think about what you can get out that man. It's nothing. Look at the garden. Look at Adam. God said, listen, God was talking to this brother by him and God walking in the cool of the day. He got a straight up relationship with God.
Literally.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah. And here it is, from his rib comes this woman. The woman listens to a serpent. The Bible says Adam was standing right next to her. Don't eat of this fruit. The Bible says she ate, and the scripture says she turned to her husband. Here. Okay. Influence. A woman by nature is influence. She's built to influence. Those what breasts are. They're allurements. They're influence. Listen, it don't take, but if a woman plays the man's game, she gonna lose every time. Play your game of feminine. You are built literally to influence a man. You see it all the time. That man done left his wife and kids for another woman in the skirt. What happened? Somebody was influencing. Wow. Right? Because men, we're basic. It don't take much. Literally. It takes love, support, and understanding your role. You get more out of a man by understanding your femininity and influencing him in a way that he should go. And big mamas taught that, right? If you like, why granddaddy always do it and got the food ready for him, treating him like a kid. No, that's your granddad. No, that's your granddad's. It was rules in your grandparents' house, right? That's right. No, your granddaddy got a chair. He got what in his house. See, that was what she understood how to cater to that man. Right. So that's the lesson that I take from it. But because they were all together 40, 50 years, it's not something that's like, yay, because some of it was toxic. Yeah. And they didn't have opportunities. But now these young women, their parents done paid them to go to college. Yeah. They got these degrees. And so they're doing life. The ideal is to understand, but what you want out of life. It's not, you don't got to substitute it, but just understand. Social media has a place, but you got to be able to, it shouldn't interfere with your relationship, shouldn't interfere with your husband and wife. Mm-hmm. You should have some level of communication. And it's difficult. Well, I don't should say it's difficult. It's just setting up boundaries, right? So like if my wife is talking and she got a question, I'm going to put my phone down.
Pay attention.
Yeah, I got to. I'm going to look at her. Mm-hmm. If I'm not, she going to tell me. Yeah. Listen, I'm talking to you. Okay, baby, I'm sorry. Right? So but it's that respect, right? Yes, because that's why you got married, not to kind of scroll, but you got married to connect, communicate, and provide some type of care for that one person who you signed up to care for the rest of your life. You're supposed to be there to give that care. And whatever that means, you make the adjustment.
Yes, sir. Wow. Pastor, on your page, there's a whole lot of good game on there, right? And just being vulnerable, seeing that on your page, I was like, wow, it's so many young dudes who feel like we got to be closed off, not be opened up, not talk to each other about our feelings. How should we go about being more emotionally available and not being so closed off in life?
It's really get help, like straight up. It's like, you got, life was not lived for you to live it alone. You need somebody helping you navigate that. That's number one.
Right.
I don't care if it's an uncle, if it's a counselor, somebody who knows how to process emotional pain. If not, listen to podcasts, listen to stuff like this, read books, listen to books, get information. Information changes situations, so you can learn how to process what you're feeling. Because once you can identify your own pain, and when you're talking to your spouse, the beauty is this, and I've seen this happen over and over and over again. If a man gets a level of emotional intelligence where he realizes how to process his pain, when he talks to his wife and says, when you made that statement, I felt disrespected, period, boom, that's all he got to say. And she will then begin to mirror that behavior quickly, much more quicker than if a woman does it, to teach a man. But if a man does it, a woman, because a woman by nature is a receiver. So when you set the tone like that, you say, babe, when you said that, like, I really felt disrespected. Or when you did that, I felt this. She's going to start talking to you like that. When you did that, I felt this way, right? So that's the understanding component, that you have to get an understanding of how to process your own pain. And again, community of people, podcasts, books, audio books, videos. You got to put the work in, right? I read books. I listen to books. That's how I know what I know. Right. This is not by osmosis, right? This is, I go to counseling. So this is why I can communicate like this. Right. It wasn't all the time. I didn't come into my relationship knowing this stuff. I came into my relationship and I was a jerk. My wife would tell you, if she was sitting here, she would say, this dude, for the first 10 years, it was hell for me. I was cool. She was having the fit. Yes, I was like, hey, this just me. And she told me, you was just a jerk. And I didn't know it. Yeah. So, and what I had, this is what changed me. And I'm saying this so I can give brother some insight, is when I realized my wife was very, very attentive to me. And I wasn't used to it. So I would push back what was, for her, care. For me, it was annoyance, because I wasn't used to love, didn't experience it on that level. So there was always pushback. And to the point, she just pulled back emotionally all the way. And I know it was her praying, because I ain't that smart to get this. I was like, she ain't talking to me like she used to. Like, and it hit me. And I asked her one day, I said, what happened? You kind of pulled, and she looked like she saw a ghost. She's like, yeah, because of this. And I was like, oh, so I began to work on me. Yeah. Counseling, books, listening, learning. Okay, let me do this. Okay, let me start doing this. Okay, let me start doing this. Oh, because I never wanted my family on my deathbed to falsely eulogize me. Where they would say stuff that wasn't real.
Try to make you sound good.
Right. Yeah. I wanted, truthfully, my experience in life, if nobody else got me or felt that I was of any value, it was my wife and my kids. Wow. And so I never wanted that to be the experience. I was unaware that she was experiencing me differently than I thought I was giving her that experience. I thought I'm thinking I'm this, and she's like, no, you're far from that. And so then I began to work on me and understood, okay, relationship is not about me. It's about how she experiences me. So that means I have to make an adjustment so that she experiences me in a way that's pleasing to her, not to me. That's right. So that's the quest. And so again, books, counseling. So that's what you got to do. You got to put the work in and learn. And if you listen to books, I'm going to tell you, and you have a hunger to learn, you will change. Yeah. And when you change, your wife will change. So my wife changed because I changed. Because I was more intentional about my behavior versus just me reacting and not putting any what I call emotional effort into it. Yes, sir. How I feel, so I just did it.
Yeah.
That's not an excuse.
Yes, sir. You had a great conversation on, I think it was Heal My Soul podcast.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that, right? And one line that you had said, I was like, yo, that's a bar. A seed must die in order for that seed to grow, right?
Right.
So for all the young dudes that's going through a bad breakup, a divorce even, how should they process going through that journey of feeling pain, heartbrokenness, somewhat of like emotional death, somewhat of just going through all of those things at one time? How should young men process those emotions?
I think, first off, it's processing, is realizing, okay, feel it. Don't suppress it. Yeah. Like, feel the pain of being unloved, of feeling betrayed, feeling unheard, not cared. Feel it. Don't deny it. Most of us don't. We deny it. So we will push it down and push through because we got to live another day. So I say feel it. What does it feel like? It hurts. Sit in that hurt and talk about the hurt, because the more you talk about it, the better you feel. Your mental state will say, don't avoid it. The very thing you need to do is talk about it until you exhaust it. Yeah. That's how healing takes place. Healing doesn't take place by hiding and suppressing. Healing takes place by talking. That's how you get to a point where you realize that old man is dead. Right? That person who lived that, I hurt, I was broken, but it gave me a different perspective. Healthy perspective, because you talk through it. Holding on to it just creates the toxic inward perception. And that's how you, earlier when you say these brothers out here, I'm going to just be a dog because, these women, they ain't nothing. That's because that person didn't talk through it. They just held on to the toxic experiences instead of just identifying, okay, I'm hurt, I was broken, she left me, she betrayed me, she did all these things. Mm-hmm. And so accept it, and that's how growth happens. Mm-hmm. Growth happens through a process. It's never overnight. And you got to be willing to stay in, you got to be willing to go through the process. Don't look at it for tomorrow. You got to take one day at a time, one moment at a time, especially if you were heartbroken from a relationship, betrayal, or even loss, death of a loved one, spouse. Those things, to your point, is emotional funeral that you're having, and there's an emotional bereavement. There is a tangible loss in someone still living because the relationship is dead. You got to mourn it, grieve it. Yeah. It's the cat who pushes it down, who don't say nothing, and then you find them all off in the corner somewhere, like, because he had this seed planted in his head of betrayal and whatnot, and then he goes in that next relationship with it instead of releasing it. Right.
Yeah. No. Hey, that's real talk. What key traits do you feel like a man should have so he could be truly successful in his life?
I think emotional intelligence, number one. Yeah. It's the key, because everybody's going to, as a man, first off, a man is designed to support. Mm-hmm. So we have a level of mental, like in my house, I'm the guy. Yeah. Right. If there's a problem, my wife coming to me, my kids coming to me, who I'm going to? I'm not going to my wife. She's not going to fix it. I definitely going to my kids. Mm-hmm. So I got to have a community of people. So I got to be self-aware, right? Or I got to be able to talk to somebody if I ain't got a community. Yeah. So I can talk through some things. So that's part of it. Secondly is the emotional intelligence part, being aware of your own process. Secondly, I think ideally is community. You mentioned Forge, the movie. I think it touched a lot of brothers because, again, it's like, man, that would be great.
I love the movie when I saw it. I was like, okay.
Yeah. That would be great to have a community of people, brothers who just came in and supported each other. Right. Why? Because that's what we desire.
Quietly too, sometimes.
Exactly. Right. It ain't got to, exactly. It's one of the things that we don't vocalize our pain. Yeah. We internalize it. Mm-hmm. And that's because we have this false narrative of life. We grew up with this Superman perception, especially Black community. You a punk, don't be a punk. You ain't got no emotions. What's wrong with you? You a sissy? What's wrong? Yeah. That's how I grew up. You ain't crying, girl. That was it, right? So this false narrative. That's why men commit suicide 4 times the rate as women. Ain't got no community. Women will have a community in a minute.
Group chats.
Group chat. I'm going out with who? Such and such. I just met him. We going out. You just met this woman. Yeah, we going out. She got a friend. We had such a good time. But you at the crib flipping through shadows. Yeah, it was cool. But see, that's the brother's experience.
Hey,
so having community is really essential. I mean, in the terms of just seeking it out, I think don't got to be big. It can be two brothers that y'all connect with every Tuesday or whatever. That's key. So emotional intelligence, community, and having a vision. In terms of going somewhere. Because there's nothing worse than a man who doesn't know where he's going or hasn't put enough time in to himself to realize what he's supposed to be doing with his life. What he wants to do, because at that point he's missing out on opportunity, and that could be for various reasons. But having a vision, having a community of people, having a level of emotional intelligence, in terms of success, I think those are critical, because success is relative, right? My definition of success now is different than was when I was 30. That's right. So. And it evolves, and I'm sure will continue to evolve and change in terms of what I believe is successful. And so having that component, because for me, success is about the people in my house. That's right. What do they say about me? How do they experience me? That's, for me, that's number one. And everything else outside of that, it is what it is. But in terms of relative emotional intelligence, community, and being able to kind of process. For sure.
Yeah, man. We most definitely have to do a part 2.
I'm with you,
I got like 30 more questions for you. But
good.
Second to last question, I promise. Who pastors the pastor?
It's a good question. I got a pastor in San Diego. I mean, I have mentors too. So my pastor, in terms of pastoring the ministry part of me, no. If there's an issue, then I call him, or typically I contact one of my brothers who I connect with, other pastors in the city who I met since I came out here. Yes, sir. Because I've been here about 10 years. So that's really, I think, a good question. I think it's in terms of intentionality. As a pastor, you got to seek out those relationships, and you got to see who you fit in with.
Yes, sir.
Because you realize, everyone's on a different journey. So for me, it's like, it's funny because my wife, we just talking about the same thing last night, talking about my friends. Like, who your friends? And I was like, well, I ain't talked to that brother. I'm naming these brothers. I ain't talked to him in a minute. Man, that's a good brother. So I'm going through this, we just had the discussion last night. And so it's really finding good people. For a pastor, for me, it's like giving, listening, and then having somebody listen to me and say, brother, you need to do this, 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 and this. It's finding people who are at your same pace. That's good. Some people are not at your same pace as a pastor. Some people are, especially me, because I'm an old young guy. So I do young stuff, but I'm older, right? So, I know how to do digital marketing. So I'm in that space. So I got pastors who clueless, and they come to me. But then until they admire and they say, what about this, this, and this, and this? But they're more grounded in the areas than I am. So I'm seeking information from them. So it's really a exchange when I'm talking to pastors. It's like, okay, because I'm known for the solution. Hey, Jimmie, how do I do this? Well, you need to do this, 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 and this. Right. I can help you do this, 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 and this. And then you got to have people who at the same pace, because some pastors move like this, and I move like this. So I'm like, dig it. Let's go. Let's go. But you got some pastors who I admire the slowness. Like, not that they're slow. They're just older, and they're in a different space.
Taking their time.
Exactly. Yes. So just sitting with them, be like, dang, brother, that's cool. You just chilling. And so I'm still working. And I'm like, man, and I can't relate. I'm admiring just the pace you got. Like, man, that's cool. Yes, but just to sit and listen and to have them ask you questions about concern and stuff you think that I'm concerned about this and about that. Yeah, you don't need to be thinking about that. Just, okay. Appreciate it. So you getting that perspective. So it's effort, it's work, but I think God provides you with people for different seasons in your life, and just taking advantage of that and realizing, you can pick up the phone. And I know I got brothers who, pastors, when I say brothers who love me, they'd be like, okay, come on, man, let's meet and let's talk. If I called them up or just listen to them. So that in terms of my community, I think that's one of the biggest things that as pastors you need another brother.
Yes, sir.
You can connect with, and just, talk through what you're in a different space, like, and sometimes it's moving slow. Yeah. Sometimes it's lessons and moving fast, but yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
60 minutes plus, it didn't even feel like it. This was a great
conversation.
Man,
I enjoy talking.
Question.
Yeah.
Jimmie Rules. Talk to me. What inspired the book?
Okay.
All of that good stuff as well.
What inspired the book? Reality is COVID. Wow. So COVID hit, and I, if I'm on a DISC personality assessment, I'm a high DI, which means I gotta be doing something. Yeah. If there's not a problem, I'm gonna create one. Not a negative problem, but I'm being some stuff. So I was at home, and my wife was like, I had like 5 things going, and I pivoted. And I listened to my wife. She said, "You need to really why don't you just start coaching people?" And so I got on Thumbtack, and I was like, "Let me go ahead and because I was on there, but I wasn't on there. I just put my stuff up there. And I was like, okay, let me start, and I started working with couples, and this was the divine wisdom. I'm not even gonna take the cake for it, because I was like, okay, Lord, I need to know what to say in a way that people can get it, is concise and is practical. Right. So that's where the book stemmed from, was me sharing these 3 core principles in terms of emotional experience. Understanding, first of all, your own experience emotionally, and being able to communicate in a healthy way. Right. Most of us have negative relationships because we don't know how to communicate. So we don't have a system of communication. System is practical. Emotions are not. So you have to make an adjustment for the system, meaning talk in a way that your partner and your spouse can hear you. Don't react. Identify your feeling and communicate it. So no matter how intense the conversation could potentially be, if we're both processing and communicating, we have a system. That means we can both keep our ears open to hear. Yeah. So knowing that people didn't have a system, I said, okay, well, how can I share this, what I've been sharing with couples, in a way that people can kind of understand it outside of a counseling session? Mm-hmm. So this whole book is really only 60 pages about how to process your feelings, process your emotions, communicate, identify, and how to build love and respect in your relationship when it's gone. Mm-hmm. So you got to rebuild what has left. It still can be rebuilt, just like it was torn down. It can be built back up. There's a process to it. Yeah. So the book is just a system, and I give some key practical things that actually work. So this is it's not even faith-based in terms of, you ain't gonna find a scripture in there, but it is scripturally based, because I wrote it not for the person who just goes to church. I wrote it for the person who's outside, of church. My clients, everybody in my clients, probably a small percentage of them actually continue to go to church. A lot of them are outside, never went to church, but because the principles are spiritually, are spiritual principles, they don't even know it. Right. So everything has a genesis to it. That's right. So it's just 3 points on how to help couples. It was a way that I could reach people. So like certain seasons. So the book, got the workbook, got a course on it, where I teach the course, and I teach, if I work with couples, I have an online course. Nice. That they take it. So if you're working with me, a couple is, they're going to get my book, they're going to get my workbook, they're going to get an 8-week digital course that they go online. It's a drip, comes from every week. And then we do a 3-day communication intensive every month. Wow. So last of every month, it's a virtual session. I'm teaching at that point principles on communication, healthy relationship, etc., so that people get an understanding of how to talk to their spouse, how to talk to their children, why their spouse acts the way they do, right? What's wrong with them? Well, they got a history, right? They may have suffered neglect, abuse. That's where that comes from. So you got to understand it. They're not doing this to make your life miserable. It's them. So I created something that, where people could get it on all levels, on audiobook, because I'm an audiobook person as well. So I just wanted to add another level of value to community. And the cool part is when I write these books, when I'm gone, they still gonna be here. So I can still add value to people. So that's where it came from.
Come on, man. Pastor Stephens, this was an amazing conversation. Like, you killed this from start to finish. Thank you. Part 2 is most definitely going to be needed.
Let me know, man.
We got to keep this thing rolling. But, man, I'm on the way out. Where can everybody follow you? Keep up with your work? Instagram, social media.
Yeah, Instagram, Jimmie.Stephens on Instagram. Facebook as well. You see me, a picture of my family. TikTok, Jimmie.Stephens. Website, I have a few websites. You can go to tgljimmie.com, JIMMIE.com, or the School of Marriage and Relationship.com, or TLICATL.org. I'm pretty much
everywhere.
We got different niches. You can find me on all that stuff, but probably social media is the quickest way.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmie Stephens, he killed it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this content, and follow him on all social media platforms. Thank you again for your time, brother.
Appreciate it being here.
Yes, sir. Until next time, let's be your host, Caleb Smith. Peace.